Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That's the podcast about itself, ourselves, and the self in general. My name is Ty, and I'm going to be your host. And as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Distance. Hey, how are you doing, man?
Can't complain about it, man.
But what if I wanted you to?
I mean, I could. I just realized I think I screwed up the angle of my monitor because I'm using like the built-in webcam.
Oh, you're fine. You're centered on my screen. You look good.
Okay, cool. Well, I meant the I don't know what to call that. The tilt, I guess.
Yeah.
I probably look ridiculous making strange waving motions on the screen. It's how we roll around here. Ridiculous.
I like to wave. Yeah, a little bit.
Oh man, I should have done something to my hair. I have helmet hair today.
Did you go for a ride today?
I just rode the motorcycle to and from work.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
That helmet. I have a couple of helmets. And also a pretty lame laugh.
Dude, me too. I've realized that about myself, and I've tried to like stifle my laugh a lot, and now it ends up with me just breathing straight into the microphone quite a bit. Like my laugh is just like, which is arguably worse, probably.
I wouldn't say you have a weird laugh.
Oh, well, good. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I'm gonna reassess everything I feel about myself now.
I don't feel taken aback, like when you start laughing, like, oh god, deal breaker.
Right.
Like, it's not one of those.
What if you've only heard me like trying to hold it back though? What if you've never heard my actual real laugh?
Then that means I'm a shitty friend because I should make you laugh harder.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
You should be amused at something to the point where like you just can't even hold it back. So I guess I just suck. I'm not quitting my day job.
No, I think we've definitely made each other laugh pretty hard over the years for like good and bad reasons. I know like I remember one time laughing at you pretty hard when I shouldn't have. When I should have like checked if you were okay first. Do you remember when we were skateboarding outside of my house and you like hit yourself in the face with the board?
Yeah, I still have a scar on my chin from that.
Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. You probably heard my real laugh that day.
Yeah, it sounded hateful and cruel.
That's not how I meant it though. But...
almost a bit sadistic.
Ooh, hey, dude, good fucking segue. Holy shit. If I had a round of applause button on here, I would be hitting that right now. But yeah.
Thank you.
That is our, oh yeah, actually, you know what? Jesus, I'm a bad podcaster. Supposed to change like the subject and everything. Yeah, go ahead, give us an introduction. What's the title and what are we talking about today?
The title is, oh god, I gotta remember it. Hold on.
You had a good one, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta look at it so I don't screw it up because I don't want to be that guy. Okay. Yeah, so from trolling to sadism. No, wait, that's not it. Yes, that is it. From trolling to sadism, the degrees of psychopathy.
Yeah, I like it. It is somewhat, I don't want to say sponsored by. What's the word I'm looking for? Somewhat inspired by, which actually from last week, inspiration. Somewhat inspired by the shit that has been going on with my server in World of Warcraft. That got me thinking about, I guess it really is sadism. Like when people derive joy from other people's discomfort or misery or pain, right? Like that is kind of the definition of sadism, basically. Like. So yeah, it seems like that happens a lot online. And then the more I've thought about it, I see it in so many different facets of life where people just really like, they like it when the opposing team or opposing tribe is in pain, basically. And it's like, it may be like a deep part of humanity, right? Like, is it kind of human nature in your opinion, or like where do you fall on that?
There's so many layers to this. So it's interesting. I don't know if you saw me make that weird face I just made, but it's because I looked up the definition of sadism on dictionary.com.
Okay.
It was the tendency to derive pleasure, especially sexual gratification, from inflicting pain, suffering, or humiliation on others. Obviously, it's not limited to that, but apparently that's a especially thing. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that generally getting some kind of pleasure from hurt or watching people in pain, that the general idea is human. I think that it's conditional. I think
Okay.
that there's conditional sadism. I think that there's certain individuals, if they've done a certain thing, or a certain deed or act a certain way, that some people might want to hurt them and actually find that pleasurable in some way. They might even consider it to be a form of justice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, yeah, I've definitely recognized that quite a bit. But I see it so much in I guess like the way you worded that, maybe like done something, but like maybe it's like not done something to someone or caused an injustice, but just being on the opposing side of something. Like so often, like I mean, look at the I see it in like politics a lot, where I've seen there's this mug that they sell. It's a coffee mug that on it says like liberal tears, and it's like like people like, oh, like like a conservative person enjoys like the fact that someone on the other side is crying. It's like, oh, I'm gonna drink your tears. It tastes so good. Like that kind of like that's kind of playful, but there is like a deeper level to that where I think a lot of people enjoy seeing people on the opposing side of something in some sort of pain. And
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, bud.
no, not at all. I was kind of struggling to finish that thought. I'm glad you kind of came in.
So I think on the subject of like the tribal behavior, I mean that's a normal human thing. I think the whole them thing, that that they, it's okay to enslave them,
Yeah.
but we won't enslave our people, our
Yeah.
group, our tribe. We'll go and find people from another place, and then they'll be slaves. Like we might do some bad shit like raping and pillaging, which I realize is a cliche, but I mean it literally. We might do
Yeah.
something like that in a village that we've conquered or a group that we've conquered, but we're not going to do that to us, our people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's, I don't remember the specific plot line or what happened exactly in the film, but have you ever seen Law Abiding Citizen?
Is that a Denzel movie?
It's Gerard Butler, and I think Jamie Foxx is in it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I think Jamie Foxx plays like a detective or something. And at the beginning of the film, it's like, yeah, it is Gerard Butler. He's like, I think at the very beginning of the film, he's like cutting this person up into little pieces
Ooh, Jesus.
that's like dead.
Which
But
one? Gerard Butler or Jamie Foxx?
Gerard Butler is.
Okay.
And he's attempting to use some loophole because his wife and daughter were murdered by this person. And he's using some loophole to basically get away with like torturing and killing the guy.
Okay.
But the thing is in that film, the audience is pretty okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, Gerard Butler is the protagonist, like he's the good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And people think, oh well, that person killed his wife and his daughter. Okay, well that's fine. They deserve that. Or this person's convicted, not convicted. Convicted is not the word. This man was a SS in the German military, and he's thrown babies into the air and used them as target practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay if he dies slowly. In fact, let's watch him die slowly. And it's conditional. Like there's certain situations where people will just sort of suspend morality, I think.
Yeah.
And not only would people find it to be justice to do that to someone who's committed an atrocity, they would derive some kind of gratification from it.
Yeah, there is like a very interesting side of humanity that I don't understand. I mean, I do understand where it comes from, but it's so strange that have you ever listened to any of Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast?
Mm-mm.
It's not like a regular thing at all. He does, like a 3 to 6 hour episode every like few months. But he did a episode that was I think he called it painfotainment or whatever, but it was like humanity's like entertainment by watching other people in pain, which is like, I mean, it used to be, like a big thing in the Middle Ages where you would go to the town square and see someone drawn and quartered or hung or things like that, or hanged, I guess, right? Is it hanged or hung?
I don't know. Hunged.
That sounds right. Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
like seeing like a man that's hung, but I'd rather watch him be hanged. I think that's that's the difference between the two. But um yeah, like like even nowadays though, like he brought this up in that talk that like it made me realize I'd never really thought of it this way, but so many of our movies and big entertainment is kind of a duplication of that. Like, yeah, we know it's not real, but there's a small part of the brain that doesn't really understand that. When you go and you see an action movie or a horror movie and there's, incredibly violent scenes going on, subconsciously there's a part of your brain that doesn't really understand that it's not real, and it's getting a large amount of entertainment from that.
Yeah. The Purge, anyone?
Yeah.
I mean, The Purge is a fantastic example because it's something where it's a fantasy that people think, oh, if there was just one day, I'd go punch that guy in the face.
Yup.
And it can be something like big. It can be something insignificant that you want to punch that person in the face for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but I'd actually, if I may, I'd like to quote something from the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Okay. What's the time period of this? I don't think I'm familiar with this work.
Oh hell, I don't know. Do I need to research this?
I got it.
I will do that. I think it was in not one of his early works, but one of like sort of in the middle of his career.
Oh, not too old.
1974.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's not super old. So yeah, I don't remember what chapter this is or what. It's completely out of context, but it's a popular quote by him, and I like it. So it goes as this.
Okay.
The line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. This line shifts. Inside us, it oscillates with the years. And even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a good quote. I like that. So have you read that full work, or did you just find that quote?
Hell no.
Gotcha.
No. I'm no. I'd rather just quote him out of context and be a pseudo intellectual than a real one.
That's fair.
No, I certainly haven't read that. I mean, there's a lot of philosophical musings in it, but it's essentially history and yuck.
You're not a big fan of reading history textbooks in your spare time?
No, I'd rather just repeat it and not know that I'm repeating it.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, call it ignorant. I mean, it is, but definitely call it that. Yeah. And the whole idea of the line oscillating, I think that's kind of what I'm getting at with the whole sort of situational morality. There's certain places that you'll find yourself in where you'll want to harm someone. Like I was talking to, I picked a very specific coworker at work today.
Okay.
And I said, hey, can I ask you a completely non-work related question? He's like, yeah. The fact that I actually announced that was sort of weird. He's like, have you ever actually introduced the question that, just ask me something non-work related?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was like, asked him if he'd seen The Purge. He's like, yeah, of course. I was like, do you find that idea appealing? And he was like, I mean, not really, no. Because see, this guy has a really chill, sort of mellow disposition. He doesn't really get upset about things. He's someone that seems pretty even keel. I would call him like a nice person, but not like impotent. Like he actually gets things done and he can communicate when he needs to.
So like an actual nice person, not a nice guy.
Yeah, like an actual nice person, not like a people pleaser.
Yeah.
And so he said, well, I mean, not really. Like, so there isn't like maybe one person he's like, no, I mean, like, he's like, if during the purge someone tried to kill me, I would do that to defend myself, but I don't have someone I'd be looking for. I was like, okay, well, what if it was just assault? What if you didn't actually kill someone? Is there someone you'd want to like beat up, maybe smack in the face? He was like, I mean, not really. I was like, okay. And see, this is like, I said to him first, I said, I'm very sorry that I'm about to put you in this headspace in a second, but this is necessary for me to ask the question, because I need you to have a situation placed in front of you. So I said, what if someone tied you up, cut your child into pieces in front of you, and then raped your wife while you were watching?
Mm-hmm.
And I could see him grit his teeth.
Yeah. And it's like, and that person got away with it in your hypothetical situation. And it's like, then the purge day comes around, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I was like, what about then? He's like, well, he's like, I mean, I'd feel a lot different about it then. And I was like, okay, well, you get a machete and a Bowie knife. What are you going to do? And he was like, it was weird because we had this moment where we both briefly thought of violence as an art form. He was like, I'm just not that creative. And I was like, creative? It's like machete art.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the thing, is that, obviously he's not what you would call a violent guy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was difficult for him to imagine what he would do. But when put in that sort of scenario, it was like, actually, yeah, I kind of would want to do something terrible to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Because I essentially made the conditions for him to suspend the morality. And when I did that, he was like, ooh. And, I honestly, like, I did feel kind of bad for putting him in that headspace. But
yeah.
I mean, it's like not something that anybody wants to think about, but it was really necessary. Plus, I know him really well. I mean, we've been working at the company for almost the same amount of time. We're I would say we're kind of buddies at work. So it's not like, I wouldn't have that conversation with just anybody.
Yeah, like the new coworkers, their second day at work.
Yeah, like definitely not. Like, hey man, what if? No. But that's the thing, is that I picked him specifically because he's someone that really isn't what I would call violent, but he's still, if you put him in the right situation, he's okay with hurting somebody. And if that were real and not a hypothetical scenario, there's no wood to knock on. He would probably in some way find something pleasurable about it.
Yeah,
because
probably.
he'd initially view it as justice, and then he'd probably find himself deriving some pleasure from it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, because I mean we've had a conversation recently that where I was kind of making the point that it's like, I don't think that I would like ever derive pleasure from someone else's pain like that. But at the same time, it's like when you put it in that hypothetical where it's like, I mean, of course it's a niche situation, but it's also like, yeah, if you think of someone has done something incredibly fucked up to a loved one or something like that, and then they got away with it, and all of a sudden you have a chance that's basically, a get out of jail free card to like, okay, well, go get your own vigilante justice. I guess like part of me would try to like write it off as I'd want to do something to make sure they didn't do it to anyone else again, but it's like, I don't know if I like, it's hard to put yourself in that situation, but I don't know if I could honestly say that there would not be any sort of enjoyment from that, or like a feeling of like justice, like you're saying. Yeah
And most of us want to, we want to think of ourselves as the ideal. We want to think that we would run toward the sound of gunfire to help people, or we want to think we would dive on top of our loved one to stop the roof from collapsing on them. We want to think that we wouldn't have fallen for the musings and the pandering and the propaganda in Nazi Germany, but most of us would have.
Yeah.
We want to think that we wouldn't be victims to the group psychology or groupthink, but most of us would.
Yeah.
And it's, very few people would even like entertain the idea. Not very few. It would take most people a good while to entertain the idea, like you just did right now, where you're like, I can't really say 100%. I mean, I can't say that there wouldn't be. And actually, for me, if someone believes completely, totally, undoubtedly, and wholeheartedly that they would handle a situation in the ideal fashion, that's a red flag to me. Yeah. I'm like, I can't trust this person.
Ashton,
because they can't even be honest with themselves.
Ashton, thank you for reminding me. I actually tried to, and apparently, so I thought this was a good title. Apparently this title conflicts with Twitch's moderation policy. So I actually can't have that as the title.
It's this mention of psychopath, I'm sure. Maybe
Either that or
sadism.
sadism. Yeah, I wonder
It's
which one. Yeah.
probably.
But yeah, I can just do.
S-
No, I mean, I'll still have that as the title on YouTube, but that was just because I pressed the button to update information. Thank you for that, Ashton. But no, yeah, you're totally right though that it's rough to put yourself in that headspace, but it's also an interesting thought experiment, I think. You know, and it's hard to answer though because like, of course, you know, you're never gonna know what exactly would go on until you're in that situation. That's a really hard hypothetical to try to experience, but
it's interesting because I actually am kind of on the other side of that than most other people. I pretty much start out on the I would definitely do something awful to that person. Like I've got ideas, I got plans, you know, and for me it's almost like I think to myself, but would you really? Would it be that bad? Yeah, would you really do something that's sadistic to somebody? You know, that's a little much. Like, I mean, you know, it's like,
it's.
Well, did you ever see
tough.
Deadpool?
Oh, of course, yeah. I've seen both of them
like,
many times.
Colossus is like 4 out of 5 moments. And he's going on and on and on about revenge and how it's a bad thing. And then Deadpool just shoots the guy in the head.
Yeah.
It's like, you're taking too long, man.
Yeah. He's like, I'll keep my eye out for the other 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and I think that's kind of, that's more how most people would deal with it. Like they'd hear somebody saying, oh, take the high road, blah, 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 blah. But very few, there's a reason why it's called the high road.
Yeah.
That's the cliche. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. That is a very true cliche though. I mean, a lot of cliches are cliches for a reason, right? But
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's I mean, it is interesting how easy it is to get people to that point though. Like I've seen so much over the past few days. I mean, going back to like how trivial it is, but the thing that started this in my mind, the DDoS attacks recently and WoW, there was like so many people in the chat for the server and for like cities and stuff like that saying like, oh, we should bring back public hangings for DDoSers and stuff like that. And like literally like people saying that, where it's like, I mean, I understand being very frustrated at this person. I understand, like, I mean, for me, it was super annoying. Like I mean, not that I'm like any different than anyone else, but it's like, for someone that works 40 hours a week, when you've got time to do something you want to do on the weekend and you're basically your entire Saturday is eaten up by someone else wanting to have fun by just fucking with other people. And like that is a very frustrating thing, but I don't think that I would want to see them publicly hanged for it, especially if it's just like some stupid kid, like that's, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it is like a federal crime, and it is like there is like prison time that you can get for it. So I'm not going to like say that the person just deserves a slap on the wrist and not like the actual legally recommended punishment or whatever. But at the same time, it's like I don't feel like they should be executed for something like this. Like I don't know, but
I think it might be necessary. I think that any of the people watching on Twitch know exactly what you're talking about. But to anyone that's listening on Apple Podcast, or are we on the Google Play Store yet?
Yeah, we have been the whole time. They just never gave me an email back. They approved me without ever telling me they approved me. So yeah, we're on Spotify, okay. Apple, Google Play, and Stitcher, I think is the other main.
So I know the last part is denial of service, but I don't know what the first D stands for.
I think it's distributed. Let me make sure.
Because like I know.
Yeah, distributed denial of service. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically it's someone can pay for a botnet and rent the bandwidth or the computer space, not computer space, sorry, the computer I guess, is it processing power really that does that? Or like either way, what you're doing is you're sending massive amounts of data to one particular server or one particular IP address to not let anyone else access it is my best understanding of what DDoSing really is, right? Like you're the IT guy. Is that am I close or
Yeah, I mean, well, because I don't understand it exactly as it is in the context of an online game,
Hmm.
but it was something that would happen like where you'd basically just send a bunch of connection requests,
Yeah.
and essentially, I don't like using the word, but because spam means a specific thing, and it's
Yeah.
not necessarily that, but you'd essentially spam several different connection requests to like a web server, and then
Hmm.
people wouldn't be able to get to it. Like for instance, a really diabolical thing would be if the well I can't. I'll just say something off the wall. If someone found a way to reanimate the dead Beatles and they went on a tour, and someone to do like a denial of service attack on like the ticketing website where people are going to buy their tickets, then
Hmm.
nobody could go on there. So I'm assuming it's something similar to that, where someone's just doing a bunch of like connection requests all at once, or taking up that much of the server's processing power and bandwidth.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, but like I said, I don't know exactly how it applies to a game.
I think it's basically the
It's
same
got to be
thing.
something very similar.
Yeah.
It seems like it might be a little more complicated to pull off because you have to have the accounts to do so, or there might be another method that they're using to tie up the resource time on the
Hmm.
server or the bandwidth. But yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know what that means, it's essentially just it's like there's a pig that's about to go eat from the trough, then another pig just like slaps that pig out of the way, but that pig doesn't eat. It just stands at the trough and blocks the other pig's way.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think another really an analogy that most people would get is like, I mean, it actually likens it to something that could be, very malicious. There's only so many lines a hospital has available, or like a 911 service has available. If you were able to call every single one of those lines and keep it busy so no one else could get a call through, that's denial of service. So doing that to like, the number, like, the servers in this game, they are only able to have X number of connections available at a time. So if they have, 20,000 connections available and there's 20,000 people trying to play it, that server is full. But if 15,000 of those connections are taken by one person deciding to do that, they're denying 15,000 people the ability to access this resource.
And that specific context is a lot different because it's not like violence,
Yeah.
and you're not witnessing the we'll call it misery. We'll call it, yeah.
Mm.
You're not witnessing the sort of inconvenience that you're inflicting on the person. So it's a bit different because in that it almost seems like a power thing. Like
Yeah.
that you're able to do this.
Well, so there was a Twitter account that was claiming responsibility for it, and like literally like tweeting like, okay, I'm moving on to this server now, and like the night before they apparently took down Wikipedia and like a couple other sites and stuff like that. So there was like a Twitter account that was claiming responsibility, and they were actually able to watch people's frustration because people were then tweeting and responding to them with how mad they were and stuff like that. So they like, I mean, I'm sure that if the person was, I would argue that the person is sadistic in some way because they were definitely getting enjoyment from everyone responding to them and being upset. And that's, I mean, that is like, I mean, like you're saying, it's not violence, but that is a level of sadism in at least my opinion. But
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think
I
that
mean,
was the biggest mistake people were making, though, is like you're feeding right into it when you're responding to this person and like showing how frustrated you are and shit like that. I mean, the best move is to just kind of ignore it, I would say. But
Yep, exactly.
or there were a few people that would like tweet at the FBI and like other law enforcement like that and be like, "Hey, have you seen this account?" And it's like that kind of makes sense. It's like, why is this allowed to stay on Twitter for X number of hours when they're literally claiming that they're doing a federal crime, basically? But I don't know what Twitter's laws are or Twitter's terms of service as far as shit like that, but I don't know. I mean, I know the account was suspended a couple hours afterwards, but
Do you remember when, and I hope nobody thinks less of us for this, we were 16 or 17 at the time. It was right after we'd gotten our driver's licenses, and we were in the middle of a major road where there were two lanes going the direction we were going. It was at a stoplight, and we were right next to each other, and you rolled down your window, and you're like, "Hey, man, you want to stop traffic?" And we sat there when the light turned green.
I
And everybody started honking.
no, I definitely I don't remember us doing that. I remember hearing a story of other friends doing that. That's
Oh yeah, you're
yeah.
right. That wasn't actually
Yeah, it
us.
wasn't us, but we did have some asshole friends that told us the
Silly,
story of
mean.
doing that. Yeah,
Yeah, they were such dicks. They needed to grow up,
definitely.
jerks.
Yeah. Which I mean, that in
Um,
itself is a denial of service. You are not letting someone use that road by just blocking it. Yeah.
and I think that those friends of ours that weren't us, definitely weren't us. I think that they found something humorous about it to some
Mm-hmm.
degree, but it's weird because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, as there were people that were on the road that were trying to get home. Maybe they had things they had to get to. Maybe
Yep.
they had to take children to practice. Maybe they had a club they were meeting with. Maybe they had a speaking engagement somewhere. I mean, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just had a shit day and they wanted to get home so they could watch Friends. I guess at the time,
Probably
maybe I think Friends was still on. Um,
might have been Ally
you know,
McBeal.
yeah. Oh, that show or Dawson's Creek,
Probably.
Seventh Heaven. We're just gonna go through a list of awful '90s shows. But it's like looking back as someone that's lived a little more than 3 decades on Earth. It's like, damn, how effed up was that?
Yeah.
And I think that it takes a certain degree because conscientiousness, being aware of how it is that you affect other people. I think it takes time to develop that
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
because when you're first born, I mean, your survival depends on you being selfish.
But there's some part of it where to get any enjoyment out of it, you have to realize that you're affecting other people in some way. You just don't have the empathy to think of the negative repercussions you're having. You're just laughing at like, oh well, we can, we're slowing down traffic for a little bit. And there's the attention factor too, where it's like that like your little action can cause X number of people behind you to either, like you're doing something that's impacting more people than normally you would by living your normal day-to-day life, I guess. But
Yeah, and in that case, it's a situation in which you're not necessarily aware of the fact that you're causing any harm to somebody, even
mm-hmm.
if it's like a minor annoyance or even a major annoyance. And so it can't necessarily be argued that it was the harm or the nuisance that was the fun part. It
Mm-hmm.
might have just been the novelty of being able to do something new with this new thing that you're able to operate, a
Yeah.
car.
Yep.
And then to be able to sort of tell the story to your friends who laugh in the same fashion, but also not realizing that they're actually harming someone.
Yep.
But it's also reactions that are fun to watch. Well, it's, like my nephews, they screw with each other. I'm like, dude, just like, don't feed into it. Don't react to your big brother doing that. Like,
Don't feed the
that's what he
troll.
wants you to do.
Yep.
And it's like, it's such like every parent, every aunt, uncle, like every older adult says that to kids, and the kids just don't get it.
Yeah.
Like they haven't lived long enough to understand that that's just something that's done, to understand the motivations for it, which is your reaction is the reason why I'm doing this.
Exactly. Yeah. If you weren't reacting to it, if you weren't feeding the troll, they would fucking stop. Because
Yep.
that's all they're getting out of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Like exactly what you're saying about the Twitter account from the person that claims responsibility for the denial of service attacks that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If people didn't, react, but also, I mean, to be fair, a lot of the individuals reacting may not have lived long enough to learn that lesson yet.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Or
very
if
true.
they've lived long enough to learn that lesson, they probably should, use what they learned, which is, but I think if you have a public forum to express your frustration, you'll probably do it too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like,
I definitely had to bite my Twitter tongue. It's like I wanted to respond, and it was like, you know what? That's exactly what this person wants. There's no reason to do this. Like, I mean, I had their Twitter page up for hours and was reading like many of the things they were saying and like trying to follow what they were doing, but I did not engage at all. But
yeah, and I think that on the subject of it being like maybe a power thing, like knowing that you have the ability to do it, I think that thing with the stopping traffic with the vehicles, that was definitely not us. That was friends that we had that were not us, for sure, not us. That there was some degree of a new ability or a new power to have in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is something that we didn't have before. We didn't have the means to do this, and now we do. So let's celebrate the novelty of this newfound power that we have. Not only can we get around town and go where we would like to go and tell our parents we're going to such and such's house, but in reality we're going to what's her face's house, and it's like, not only that, but we can also piss off grown-ups. And what if we always wanted to do? Finally be able to have some control over these tyrannical adults.
Well, there's definitely a big part of that too, where, I mean, like you're saying, like, you feel incredibly, or at least I did, and I'm sure most do, but as a young teen like that, you feel very powerless. Like, so much of your world is dictated by a lot of shit going on around you, and you don't really have much to say about a lot of it. So whenever you have the moment to see some sort of power like that, I mean, I understand why it was something our friends wanted to do.
Yeah, and like the with the whole thing with people, implementing a type of attack that stops people from playing an online game that they want to play. It's entirely possible that those individuals feel like they're powerless in every other part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
They might be actually doing this to feel as if they have some kind of control over something. I mean, who knows? Like, humans are complex as shit. So yeah. I mean, who knows? And who knows how old the person is? Who knows what their life is like? Who knows what part of the world they live in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, there was well, first of all, I didn't bring up, I guess, the first few tweets about it. The person was actually tagging the big popular streamers on my server. So they were like, it seemed like an attention thing. It's like they knew that Asmongold and Soda Poppin were streaming at the same time, and they both play on our server. And it was like, okay, we can literally, take down this server that 60,000 people are watching this one person play. Let's get him kicked offline over and over again while these people are watching. So there is like there's definitely an element of wanting the attention to do that. The funny thing was, over the course of the day doing that, Asmongold's viewers like doubled, because people love controversy. So like literally, I mean, he went from like 60,000 viewers to over 100,000, and he made a shit ton of money in donations and other shit that day while being kicked offline. So I don't know if the person had their desired effect really, but they definitely got the attention,
Maybe it's a conspiracy. Maybe it was one of the streamers that did it.
I've heard people talk about that.
I mean, who knows? Maybe not. I mean, I guess that's neither here nor there. But it's that's kind of funny, because it's also like, well, let me get a little bit of your popularity, or like a little bit of your fame. Let me steal a little bit of that.
Yep. It's
like,
it's called chasing clout a lot. Is
that what they call that? That sounds like the name of a rap group.
That actually would be a pretty good name for a rap group, dude. Are you trying to put out like the hottest album of 2020? You want to be the clout chasers? Drop our EP.
I'm not much of a lyricist, but we could try.
We'll get ghostwriters, dude. We don't need to write our own lyrics.
Oh yeah, that's true. We can just hire somebody expensive with just save up some money.
But yeah, like
we'll write them an IOU.
But back to like the original point though. So I mean, there's multiple different motivations, I guess, that people have. There's the attention, there is the actual enjoyment from watching others squirm, basically, like whether it is real pain or just minor inconveniences, like not letting them play a video game. Do you think there's any other like motivations that we haven't touched on that we may not be thinking of?
Some people are so miserable and so unhappy that they need to inflict their misery on other people.
Yeah.
That's another motivation, because they want someone else to be as miserable as they are.
Yeah.
And they might derive some pleasure from that, but it's because of the fact that they're miserable.
I've heard about that spoken a lot with regards to like school shooters. I think even just from reading their their writings and journals and stuff like that, I think it's been directly quoted that it's like they want to make other people feel how they've felt, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they want to cause as much damage to the state of existence as humanly possible
Mm-hmm.
right before removing themselves from it.
And there's also, I mean, there's some people, Master Wayne, that just want to watch the world burn, right? Like, is there, I mean,
Yeah,
there is just like a chaotic element too, where there may not even be enjoyment or any real reason behind it other than just really wanting to stir things up, right? Like, I don't
yeah.
know. Yeah.
It's like, why does a 7-year-old throw a pine cone in the fire? Because it burns really brightly just for a short period of time, and it's kind of splendorous to watch. It's the same kind of thing, I think, to some degree. There's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily a reason for it, but there's something somewhat stimulating about it, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and some people are just freaking nuts. They're just
True.
no rational um, reasoning. No rational reasoning. There's nothing rational about what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I mean, so we've kind of covered a lot of the descriptive side of it, like prescriptively or normatively. Then, I mean, is there? I mean, okay, so obviously there's something legally wrong with doing stuff like this, and the law will punish you. But do you think, like on a deep human level, there's anything objectively wrong with it, or is it a part of the human nature that yes, we're trying to suppress because we live in societies where it's not accepted, or like what are your feelings on that?
Well, hmm. Well, for me, I think there's, I need to look this thing up because there's something. It's like a morality, like developmental hierarchy.
Hmm. Okay.
I forget who came up with the Kohlberg, 3 levels of moral development.
Okay.
So I agree with this model to some degree. So there's level 1 is pre-conventional,
Okay.
and that's obedience and punishment orientation. This is with the child.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
stage 1 is focused on the child's desire to obey rules and avoid being punished. Um, so it's negative reinforcement. So they want to avoid, being put in the corner or timeout or whatever. And then there's the instrumental orientation, which is like part of level 1. It's a second stage of it where it's the what's in it for me kind of
Mm,
position,
okay.
in which behavior is defined by whatever the individual believes to be their best interest. Then level 2 of that is
Mm,
conventional, um, like good boy, nice girl orientation. And that's where the child wants the approval of others and acts in ways to avoid disapproval. This is more like people pleasing behavior in adults.
yeah. Yeah.
And so the next stage of that is the law and order orientation, where the child blindly accepts rules and convention because of their importance in maintaining a functional society. And then the third level of Kohlberg's theory is post-conventional, which is the social contract orientation. That's
Okay.
where the world is viewed as holding different opinions, rights, and values. And such perspectives should be mutually respected as unique to each person or community. And then there's the universal ethical principle orientation, which is the very last stage of this whole thing. And I think and based on this theory that very few people ever get here, and the final stage, moral reasoning, is based on abstract reasoning using universal ethical principles. This would be like Immanuel Kant trying to nail down the philosophical principles of morality and
Mm-hmm.
trying to determine what the most universal ideas are, and that these are like they're somewhat abstract or metaphysical ideas like equality, dignity, respect, and that laws are only grounded insofar as that they're like ethical or they're ethical principles, and these are principles that are upheld just because this is what you should be doing because you've determined in
Mm,
your own mind that this is the best thing.
mm-hmm.
Very few people ever make it to this point. In fact, I would argue that no one ever has.
Hmm.
This is almost like an ideal.
Yeah, I was about to say that's like utopian,
So
right?
I think that, I mean, I realize this is a very complicated question, but if anyone's interested, Kohlberg, 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 Stages of Moral Development. There's a whole lot of other theories, but this is just the one that I was thinking of at the time, and I think it's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh my God, I just lost the freaking question.
Well, I was
You're
saying,
asking about, okay, yeah, sorry, I get it. So the reason why that this model is valid in my estimation is because it's clear the majority of people stay at stage one,
okay,
obedience and punishment, at the very, very beginning,
yeah,
level one, stage one, right there. I don't do this because something bad's gonna happen. Like
yep.
I want to do this, but it's not allowed because if I do, then I'll go to prison.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say
I'll
that's the basis of our whole
Yeah,
judicial system, basically, right?
yeah, and the whole idea is that it's an understanding. The justice system is an understanding that the majority of people won't get past this.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like it's conditional. Like I feel like in certain situations, morality is to be suspended, and I think everybody feels that way. And I try
Yeah.
to think about those situations in the most rational, logical, and unselfish and most self-aware way possible. But then there's like the what's in it for me thing. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to follow this rule, that rule, and this rule in the workplace because I'll get a promotion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, not because I think it's the best thing for the company or, and that's where this idea of like a true leader comes in. They're the ones that are going to put forth what's best for the whole and for the people that answer to them. And they're not going to be self-serving and interested.
Mm-hmm.
The what's in it for me thing is pretty common. So I think most people are really stuck in that pre-conventional area.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people get to the approval of others part, and that's kind of like adult people pleasers, which is funny because those people are miserable, but everyone around them is happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and it's like it's kind of like that's almost like positive reinforcement. Like you do this and someone pats you on the back.
Yeah.
But it's just that I think that the reason why the idea of a psychopath worries people so much is because it's essentially what's underneath.
Mm.
It's like what's at the core. If it wasn't for all of these other, regardless of where they come from, if it wasn't for all of these other inhibitions, this is exactly what we would all be.
Yeah. It scares people to see the humanity or the beauty in something that's supposed to just be evil. It's like that. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the reasons why, like so many people are kind of shook when they see Hitler's paintings, and you realize that like he was this human that enjoyed art and enjoyed painting,
Yeah.
and it's
And
like it puts a human face on something that's supposed to be just this embodiment of evil, basically.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, because Hitler's the go-to. He's
Yeah.
the go-to for when you're trying to give an example of evil.
Yep.
It's like good intentions. Well, there is someone that had good intentions. His name was Hitler. Yeah, that's the go-to for everyone. And I only saw those paintings within the last 3 or 4 years.
Hmm.
And I mean they're all of architecture, but like I don't know a lot about painting or visual art in general, but they seem pretty good to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've shown this to a lot of people who feel this, like you can see it, like the cognitive dissonance is on their face.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's all this stuff going on in there that's like that's good. I'm not supposed to like that. This is painting. I like art because
Yep.
human, but also bad guy.
Yep.
So if I may, I would like to just go through a quick non-exhaustive list of traits that are considered to be psychopathic in nature.
Okay.
And these are just different types of antisocial behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these are things that some of us do sometimes.
Do me one quick favor
Yep.
first. What is the actual just definition of psychopath?
Ready, go. All right.
I want to make sure we're on the
psychopath
same page with that first.
definition. Yeah, well, so in this case, it says a person suffering from chronic mental disorder with abnormal or violent social behavior.
Okay. Okay. Is there like a non-medical definition? Like, is there a number 2, or is that basically
That's kind of the non-medical one.
Okay.
There's the informal one, which is like you'd use as a figure of speech.
Yeah.
Like calling a mean coworker a psychopath.
Yeah. Yeah.
An unstable or aggressive person.
Okay. Okay. All right. So what are the traits then?
So this is I don't know who. I think this is a person's last name. Hare, Hare, psychopathy checklist.
No, it probably was just
So
a rabbit that wrote it.
so this is not from the DSM-5, like the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is like where we get diagnoses for mental disorders from. So if anyone who's listening wants to look at in depth and have a better understanding of this stuff, you can go and actually look at the DSM-5. I'm pretty sure you can just find that online.
I've heard it's a page turner, man. Like it.
Yeah, it's better than Leviticus. So here's the checklist. It's quite long, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. So glib and superficial charm, grandiose estimation of self, need for constant stimulation, pathological lying, cunning and manipulativeness, lack of remorse or guilt, shallow affect, which essentially means superficial emotional responses, callousness and lack of empathy, parasitic lifestyle. And to clarify that one, it's like where you have relationships where the benefit's only for you and you're essentially feeding off of the other person. Poor behavioral controls, lack of inhibition, sexual promiscuity, early behavior problems, lack of realistic long-term goals, meaning that the goals could be grandiose because of that grandiose self-estimation. Impulsivity, irresponsibility, failure to accept responsibility for one's own actions, many short-term marital relationships, juvenile delinquency, revocation of conditional release. I don't even know what that means. Criminal versatility. The thing is this, you don't have to be all of these things necessarily. But an individual who fits some of these might just be a bit antisocial, might have some antisocial traits.
It's like one of those Cosmo quizzes where it's like if you score between X and X, you're probably a psychopath, right? Like it's not, you don't have to check all the boxes, but at a certain point after filling so much of the criteria, like
right. And one thing that people often don't understand about mental disorders is that it's an extreme, like it's out there. So like if someone seems kind of excited for a couple weeks and then they're sort of sad because something happened in their life, that doesn't mean they're bipolar. The number one is they're sad, they're not depressed, and they're excited and energetic. They're not having a manic episode. And then the other thing is there's an even further misunderstanding where if someone's moody, they say they're bipolar. I'm like, seriously?
Well, I mean, I think we do that a lot with so many mental, I don't know if disorder is the word I want to use, but I guess it's mental disorders, right? But we kind of normalize them in so many ways where like, oh, just because someone likes things neat, they say they have OCD. And it's like, no, that's, that is not at all what that means.
And I'll even have situations where I'll ask people questions that are actually diagnostic criteria for obsessive compulsive disorder. Like, do you have marked discomfort and anxiety whenever things aren't rearranged in a particular fashion that interferes with your everyday life? Like, not really. So what you're saying is you're particular.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they're like, huh? Like, and maybe for me at least, I'm being excessively sensitive, but I really don't like it when people casually throw those terms around.
It's weird how we've taken so many medical terms that had an actual definition and we just turn them into colloquial things that we say. I mean, like even like insults like idiot, moron, things like that. Those were like medical terms that meant something at a certain point of time. And now it's just words we throw around when someone does something silly. Like,
and I mean, we throw the psychopath thing around too, even. I mean, I think everyone understands that that's like not being serious, but so the thing is that like a lot of people in certain situations, people might exhibit these behaviors. I would say that glib and superficial charm, people do that often. There's lots of situations in which you're being somewhat doesn't glib mean smug?
I feel like it. You're being glib, Matt. I just remember like Tom Cruise saying that during that.
It's like, let's use a word no one uses anymore.
What is, all right, so glib is
fluent and voluble but insincere and shallow.
So
like
somewhat
eloquent,
smug,
eloquent but not necessarily meaning what you're saying. But people do that. I mean, salespeople, I mean, you do have to have some kind of superficial charm. And in certain situations, like I said, conditional morality. In certain situations, people won't feel remorse for bad things that they do,
Correct. Yeah.
or for, let's say, harmful things. I don't want to use the word bad. That's too nondescript.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of times where normal people will make a friend and ask things of that friend all the time and never give anything back. That's a parasitic relationship.
Yeah.
Where you're taking and never giving anything back. I mean,
By definition,
these are things that normal people are capable of, behaviors that we're capable of exhibiting. And they're obviously maybe not to the extreme that would actually make them diagnosably like a psychopath.
Or to the like how often they happen, right? Like if someone just does that on occasion versus that being the norm of how they treat people.
Yeah, like I'm going to, I mean, like hanging out with your partner's family. There's a lot of people that are in relationships with people that they really, really love and they really enjoy, but their family just, so you're going to hang out and act like you really love talking about football because dad loves football, or, mom's a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, but you like the Redskins or whatever. I don't know. But there's certain situations where you're going to be charming, but in a way that's extremely insincere.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is that lying and pathological lying are like different things, because pathological lying means that it's like an unavoidable like disease process. Like it's a thing that you just can't help. And there's plenty of people that do that. Like they lie in a fashion that's like, it's like they can't even freaking help it. And they're not necessarily a psychopath, but people lie all the time.
And I mean, like, there's sometimes honestly good reason to, like lying is not an objectively bad thing, but
yeah, I mean, sometimes people will lie about stuff that's like completely insignificant, like that doesn't even matter, just to win the approval or to have someone think a certain thing about them. So, I mean, it's like, but I mean, to get back to the question, which was, is it something that I think is a normal like human behavior? Yeah, all this is. From the moment you're born, you're trying to overcome your ego and you're trying to overcome your need for selfishness, because the civilization that's been created for us, we've determined that this is not how people effectively live together in groups. This is not how we exist in a group, because I mean, I guarantee you, man, if assault wasn't a crime, people would be punching each other left and right at work every day. People would be getting smacked around. Like, it would just be fucking WrestleMania in the hallways. Like, it would be ridiculous. Like, people would be disciplined by human resources, not because they beat each other up. It's like, well, we understand that you got in a wrestling match in the hallway and put a hole in the wall. This is why we can't have nice things. It's like that kind of stuff. But yeah, I really believe that people would just run around smacking the shit out of each other all the time if they could.
But I like what you pointed out there, though, that it's it may be like a deeper part of human nature, but it's something that we are almost required to overcome because of the society we live in. Where it's like, there's a lot of things that are, I mean, like it's probably, I mean, this is like a whole other can of worms, but it's probably not in human nature to be monogamous, right? Especially for males. But we've created a society where that's expected. Most relationships are expected to be exclusive monogamous relationships. So we kind of have to go against a part of our deeper human nature to thrive in this society, which I feel like this is another thing like very similar to that, where it's like, yeah, we may have this nature where because of our tribal past, we may like to see people of the other tribe, quote unquote, in some sort of pain, but it's like important to move past that because of the situation that we're currently in.
Yeah, and I mean, and unfortunately, it's damn near impossible. And the other thing is that I think the word's pluralistic, isn't it? The American society, there's so many people from so many different backgrounds with so many different ideas, beliefs, practices.
Yeah.
It's something that was always going to happen from the founding of the the nation, that it was going to get to the point where it was going to become very difficult. So tribalism is a very easy thing to happen because of all the differences between people in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And tribes can be cross-sectioned in all kinds of ways.
Yeah. Well,
There's
yeah,
all
just like
kinds of groups you may feel like you belong to.
exactly. Like, and I feel like we strive, for some reason, we like to find people to put in the opposing position. Where it's like you were talking about earlier. I mean, right at the beginning, we were talking about like, oh yeah, we wouldn't enslave them because they're part of us. We're going to look at this other group that's different. But it's like we find ways to, it's like we are. So often I see people that it's like we live in the same country. They're of the same skin color. They're of the same socioeconomic class. There's so many things they have similar, but they try to find a reason to put this other person on the opposing side so they can have some sort of division there. That I feel like we crave that division for some reason.
Nothing brings people together like a common enemy.
Yeah, true.
And it's as it happens. Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna do it. I'm doing it right now. 18 years ago today, there was a point where a lot of people felt like they were quite united, because regardless of conspiracy theories and whatnot, we all felt that we had a common enemy.
Yeah.
And there was all this never forget stuff, and like all the flags and everybody standing united and blah, 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 blah. And now we don't have a common enemy necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, but it's true. When you have the other, it can bring people together in some way. I mean, it's kind of sad, but true.
Do you remember that speech that Reagan gave where he even like, I don't remember like what the reason for him saying this was. It was kind of so fucking weird, but he was talking about how like nothing would bring humanity together like the threat of an alien invasion, basically. That it was like I mean, just like you're saying, like that being like a complete outside enemy would really bring everyone together from Earth. Like,
think about how you felt during the scene in the movie Independence Day, when the president of the United States, because who else would make the speech, is addressing a whole bunch of other nations and saying today is our Independence Day.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, huh. I mean, I'm actually just completely glossing over the fact that, why the fuck did Reagan say that?
Well, exactly. Yeah, it was kind of weird, but I mean, it was true. It was weird, but true.
Okay, I need to find this now, and there's probably some hilarious theories on that, and ideas of, or I would love to know what was happening. I need to actually look this up now. I'm very, very interested in this. So I think that there's a whole lot of bad in people, and you look at like The Prince, by Machiavelli.
Mm-hmm.
It's a book that it's intended to sort of introduce you to the concept that you can learn things from not so great people.
Yeah.
And I think that there's I can't remember who it is. Jung, maybe? The idea of like integrating your darkness or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is there is a use for that bad. There's a use for that bad in you. There's a time where it might actually be necessary and actually useful.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like it's funny actually. My girlfriend and I were hanging out a while ago, and we were talking about the idea of evil.
Okay.
And she kind of came from sort of a Judeo-Christian perspective, and she's actually at the point now where she's like asking questions, so we have interesting conversations about it. But we were talking about the idea of evil.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying that evil always existed. I'm like, not necessarily. The idea of evil became a thing when we determined the best way for us to exist together.
Yeah.
To live in a community. So I showed her a video. It was kind of graphic of it's a cheetah, and there's a small, I don't know, antelope, some four-legged herbivore that lives in Africa or New Zealand or some shit. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm so ignorant. So it's in the road, and first of all, someone's taking video footage of this, but it's a cheetah, and the cheetah's got its claws like in the hindquarters of the animal, and this is a rather young cheetah. It looks like it and its sibling had just left its mother. They weren't at the point where they parted ways yet, because
Okay.
eventually they do oftentimes. So it's sitting there, this little baby animal screaming like in the middle of the road, and every time it tries to get away, did you just pull up a video of a cheetah?
I was going to, yeah, but apparently your camera's not set up on that scene. So
Every time it pulls away, the cheetah pulls it to the ground, and then while the animal's still alive, the cheetah goes around to it, sticks its teeth in its throat while it's screaming, and drags it off of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still alive, and then the sibling is over on the edge of the road. Then they both grab it and run off with it, probably to rip it to pieces. So I asked her, was that evil?
It's not.
Well, it's an animal causing lots of harm to another animal. The animal is a baby.
Mhm.
The screams that it's doing, it's communicating. It's essentially screaming for its mother.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a larger, older animal that's about to kill this baby. So, I mean, I agree with you that no, it's not evil. It's an animal that is built a certain way with certain organs and certain teeth and a certain gastrointestinal system, and a certain adaptation to eat meat, and an adaptation to be able to kill effectively, to be able to eat the meat. So it's like, that's just an animal surviving.
Yeah.
And it's neither good nor bad. It just is. So that was sort of the discussion we had, is like, before we lived in communities, evil wasn't necessarily a thing. It was just animals surviving.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. It does take a community aspect to define that. However, like, I feel like we had this conversation before, and I brought up, I don't know if it's necessarily human though. When animals live in communities and do that, can there be something that's basically evil? When if an animal's doing it literally in a sadistic manner, when it's not for the necessity of food or anything like that, is that like, can nature be evil, or is it simply a human? Well, I guess humanity's part of nature too, but you know what I mean. Can evil exist outside of human?
So suddenly, like, me having a thing for big cats is proven to be useful. So we might have talked about this before, but community cat lions.
Okay.
They live in a pride, and there's typically one male, and then at a certain point, the young males are ran off because, shitty gene pool, incest, not a good thing. And typically, if there's two males, it's because they're siblings, and one is dominant and the other one is submissive. So one ends up mating with the females in the pride, and the other one does not.
So the other one just gets cucked the whole time?
Yes, I think gross. Yes, but gross. Yeah, but more or less. So
my man.
But like, what will happen is, if a male gets very old, there's constantly males just running around trying to find themselves a pride. And if they stumble upon a pride where a male is old and not quite so strong, I mean, they'll fight. Oftentimes, if the male is stronger, it'll run the other male off, and it's like, this is my pride, But when they're older and they're weaker, one comes along, and sometimes it's a fight to the death, but not usually. Animals will have a survival instinct, so typically the older, weaker male will just kind of run off to avoid dying, and more or less die alone. Kind of sad, but whatever. So, do you know the first thing that male does when the pride becomes its own?
Oh yeah, doesn't he like kill all the infant males, or all the like young males?
Yep. Tramples them, snaps their necks, all kinds of awful shit.
Yep.
Apparently Lee's knew that. Yes.
Yeah,
kills all
Lee
the
knew
babies.
too. Yeah.
So is that evil? Because they're in a community.
We'll see that. I don't know.
It's weird, because from a completely, like, I guess maybe Darwinist standpoint, that cat has just proven that the other cat's genes are not as good. Even though the reason why it lost the fight is because it's weak. It actually probably had some pretty good genes. It's because it, at some point before it got old, was quite strong.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question, because the word itself, the definition comes from humanity. So it's hard to project that idea onto another species that doesn't live in the same style of communities we have, or have the same type of morality that we have, I guess. I mean, it requires morality to define
Yeah.
evil, right?
Right. I mean, and I don't think that there's a, oh crap, I just scratched my nose with my middle finger. Sorry, everyone. Except unless you're just listening to this. Um, so I think that the question was like, um, is there an objective standard even
Mm-hmm.
with animals? And I would say that the answer is no. I mean, because that's kind of what you just said, sort of, that there's kind of, not really a standard that it's all defined.
Yeah.
It's metaphysical in nature. So, I think that at a certain point, right was whatever was necessary for you to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And it goes that way for humans. And I think that probably once people started living in communities and groups, it was determined that there needed to be an agreement on how we are to treat each other, and there needed to be consequences for that were negative if you didn't. And I think,
Yeah, I think Lee's right. There can't be a definition of evil without the intellect to understand morality. Yeah, which
true.
I don't think animals like I mean they understand pain. They would understand emotional pain, but I don't know if there's any way you could say they understand or have morals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably
Agreed.
just humans anthropomorphizing it if we try to say that they do.
Yeah. Even yeah, even calling a house cat curious is anthropomorphizing,
Mm-hmm.
because curious isn't necessarily the proper word to use, if there even is a word to use for the behavior that we perceive as being curious.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, but it's just that once you live in a group, things change,
Yeah.
and there's certain things that you can and can't do. And then
Well, it
you know
not even can and can't do. There's just certain things that there will be consequences if done.
yeah,
You
it's
can
like
still do them, but like
yeah,
you
the
pointed
whole
out with
idea, yeah,
yeah,
that you can do whatever you want, but you have to be willing to accept the consequences for that. Yeah.
yeah, Lee,
um
exactly. Yeah, the curiosity is a lot of the hunting instinct. They're just
yep,
exploring that. Yeah, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's a different behavior required for stalking. That's correct. Or also to assess a threat.
yeah.
uh
Find
and it's not
areas that they could hide in
yeah,
later if they
yeah.
wanted to pounce from or things like that. Yeah,
And even using the term assess is anthropomorphizing. We
yeah,
can't
true.
talk
Yeah,
about animals without comparing them to humans. It's just not fucking possible, because we don't have any other definitions for behavior,
yep.
except for our own. So yeah, what do you think though? I mean, do you think that that it's I hate using the term, but human nature for us to want to do mean shit to each other?
I think, yeah. I mean, I feel like I said it before though, but yeah, I think there is a somewhere deep we have that instinct. And I think that it's similar to a lot of other instincts that we have, that it's something that to be productive in society we need to not give into. And I feel like there are a lot of people that do give into those instincts, and like we just talked about, they are punished in some way, or there are consequences for those actions. But yeah, I'm sure that there's somewhere deep down unconsciously or subconsciously, yeah, there is some sort of sadism in everyone, I think. How much you actively try to suppress it is,
Mhm.
I would say, a good thing, honestly. I don't, I hate kind of using the terms like objectively good or bad or things like that, but I think that it is like not only a exercise in discipline, but just makes you probably a more productive member of society to try to suppress that as much as possible.
Yep. And
But
there's like even something as little as like that person you don't like at work getting fired, somebody
mm-hmm,
kind of like that. But
yep.
there are certain situations in which, are you familiar with like that train experiment thing,
Yeah,
the psychopath thing?
the trolley
Yeah.
experiment, right? Yeah, yeah.
So there's situations where someone, well, of course, there's one major part of the thought experiment that I don't like, but it doesn't matter. The whole idea that
Well, for people
there's like
that aren't familiar, let's run through it. Do you remember like question one and how it progresses?
uh there's questions.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Oh,
different levels of it. Yeah,
I just know the scenario and the possible solutions to the problem.
Well, I know it starts with the original version is like, so there's a runaway train going down the tracks, runaway trolley, and there's 5 people tied up on the tracks, and they're on the main track. You are standing next to a lever that controls a switch. If you pull the lever, the trolley will be redirected onto a side track, and the 5 people will be saved, but there's one person tied down to that track. You will kill the one person by saving the 5. You have 2 options. You could either do nothing and allow the trolley to kill the 5 people, or you can actively pull the lever, diverting the trolley, saving the 5 people, and killing one. That's the original version of it. That is the one you were thinking of, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to post a link on here. There was a guy named Michael that had a channel called Vsauce.
Oh yeah,
and he has a show, Mindfield. He actually did an episode where he created a simulation trolley experiment and convinced people that they were actually in the situation. So I just posted a link to it. But the show's called Mindfield, and the episode's called The Greater Good. If you're just listening,
yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. That's interesting.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, so it's like the whole idea that you can, you can flip because there's, what is it, in one of them there's a conductor there, right? And then there's another one where there isn't a conductor there. So you have to push the conductor off of like some stand, and the fall's going to kill him.
Yes, yeah,
and that's the only way you can get the conductor out of the way. So a psychopath is not going to have the degree of remorse to give a shit. So they'll push them out of the way, and then they'll flip the switch. And then there's also the fact that it won't matter to them. They'll just see there's 5 people versus 2 people. That's what, 5 and 2. Yeah. And they'll just flip the switch because they want to, the 5 people you save more people than the 2. But the problem for me is, why does the psychopath give a shit?
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, that's the problem I have with the thought experiment, is the psychopath is like, fancy that. Well, I'm going to go make some money and have sex with a bunch of people now. It's like, do stuff that's good for me.
And possibly become president of the United States of America.
I mean, I don't. Yeah,
that was meant to just be funny. Yeah, there's no reason to touch on that.
That's one thing I refuse to talk about. I just don't even. I'm bored with that one.
I can't wait to have our politics episode. That'll happen eventually.
Are we doing one?
I mean, eventually we're gonna run out of topics. That's a whole lane there. We'll get to religion first probably, but yeah, eventually we're gonna have to touch on all the topics you're not supposed to talk about, right?
If we have to, for the sake of content and creativity, I suppose.
Exactly.
But there's also a lot of traits that are somewhat antisocial that can actually be good for you as a person individually. Because sometimes, there's this whole idea that, it's a bad thing to have a lack of empathy and conscientiousness, but there's another side of things, I think, where people are too empathetic.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Like, romantic relationships. You're not in a romantic relationship strictly for the other person's benefit. It's a mutual thing. So you both need to be responsible for if you're getting what it is that you want to get from the relationship. So you need to have some degree of selfishness there, because you need to make sure you're getting what you want. But then also, it's not psychopathic because it's not parasitic,
Okay.
But it could be. I mean, there's situations where people don't care about the other person, or if they're getting what they want, but it's that person's responsibility too. So it's like, if you're in a relationship that is parasitic in nature, you need to leave because you're not getting what you want out of it. You're not doing it strictly for someone else's benefit. And if you are, then that's the too much concern for other people.
I mean, there is the possibility that is what that person wants. What if they're a little bit of a masochist, that they want a relationship that's parasitic, and they are actually in turn getting what they want by not getting any compromise, basically. I mean, that's that's a strange detour, but that could be possible, right?
Well, in this situation, I'm talking about someone who's like not necessarily a masochist, that isn't actually. Well, then in that case, then they've got nothing to worry about, because they're getting what they want. If that's what you want, then stay there. If not, then go somewhere else. If it's like, look, you're not being selfish enough, and you're not making me sacrifice enough, I need to be more harmed by this relationship. It's like, so you need to be responsible for that if that's what you want.
I'm sure that's a conversation that has happened.
Yeah.
Like that
I
really
mean,
probably has happened at least once in human history.
it's entirely possible.
Yep.
And I think that the idea of being impulsive, I was actually talking to my mom about this today. There's sometimes when you're in a situation with someone who's kind of an asshole or someone who's willing to be a dick,
Mm-hmm.
people oftentimes are so overwhelmed by the social contract or how we're supposed to act or maintaining the peace or being cordial that they don't speak up when they need to.
Yeah,
And
I've been guilty of that. I
people will
definitely
be
know that.
taken aback by someone else's rudeness, um and then they won't react to it in a fashion that's um effective in being assertive or even aggressive if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's situations in which being a bit impulsive and actually not caring about hurting someone's feelings when necessary can be a good thing too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of these traits, if not taken to the extreme, can actually be beneficial, because there's situations where someone walks up to you and talks to you like you're a child and you're just sort of so like surprised by it, but then at the same time you're trying so badly to keep things civil
Mm-hmm.
that even though it's probably necessary to give that person a verbal face smack, you just don't.
Well, I feel like I say this every fucking episode, but it always seems to be true. There's a balance that needs to be found. Like it's not good to be too far on one side or the other, but there, yeah, like you're saying though, that is kind of the did you say it was young? The idea of embracing that darkness and being able to use it because it is useful at certain times and
I
necessary
think it
almost.
was I think it was young. Let me make sure.
Yeah, it's like I
I
mean
think.
it is a constant theme here though that there is a balance that needs to be struck.
Okay,
Um,
it's integrating the shadow.
okay,
That's what it's called, and it is young.
okay,
Um, it's like it's like the Jungian psychology practice. Um, it's much more complicated than just like how we're talking about it, but just
hmm
to make it not make our brains explode, and because we don't have a lot of time left, it's essentially just taking that bad side of you and using it when necessary.
yeah,
Because it's like, like it's not nice to crack someone's skull against the pavement, but when that person is trying to grab your child and run with them, crack their skull against the pavement. you know
yeah,
like that is it's okay to be comfortable with doing something that's not necessarily kind to someone else when it's necessary.
yeah.
um you know and obviously that's situational.
And it is. I
um
mean, yeah, I think it needs to be said that it's like like I've talked about, I mean, we do live in a society where I think those situations are becoming less and less frequent. You know, I
oh
mean,
yeah,
but
yeah, I mean,
it can still happen. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, the United States is a very safe place to live, regardless of what people might try to make you believe. Like you're ridiculously safe
hold
here.
on. Are you telling me the Fox News has been lying to me?
I don't watch Fox. I don't watch the news at all.
Good.
Um, but probably.
But no, I mean, yeah, there is definitely a vested interest in a lot of media outlets, I would say, to make it seem like your environment is a lot less safe than it is. You know,
Because
and
that goes back to the fucking sadism thing.
yeah,
Because people like to hear about the shootings
yeah,
and the fires and the car wrecks and the robberies and the stabbings.
yeah, it makes money, right? I mean, that's yeah,
Yes, it does.
yep.
Yes, it does.
All right, well, I mean, do you have any final thoughts? I mean, I feel like we got through a
Um,
lot of what I wanted to talk about. Did we
yeah,
miss
I
anything?
would. I would actually like to use another quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Okay,
His last name is so weird. It's also from the Gulag Archipelago.
okay,
So that's what I would like to. That would be my closing thought. Is that
okay,
um, if only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. That well, yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the best closing thought. I've got nothing I can say after that. Well, we have reached the end of another episode of the Metacast podcast. If you guys are watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the conversation, hit that like button, subscribe to keep up to date with what we're doing here, and comment below. I'd like to hear your thoughts on trolling, sadism. How do you feel that sometimes it is necessary, sometimes it can be beneficial, or that it is just people being assholes? I'd love to hear a discussion on that. If you guys are interested in further taking part of the conversation or even being a future guest on an episode, you can join the Discord. The link is in the description below. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode live Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylaTV. And thank you all for listening and or watching. Have a good week.